Hello, hello! You're listening to Politics, a Harry Potter reread podcast focusing on politics in the wizarding world. As always, I'm Adri, one of your hosts, and a recovering English major.
And I'm Helene, one of your other hosts and producer of this fine podcast that you are listening to.
A fine podcast. How are you, Helene?
I'm doing pretty good. The health stuff with my dad that I mentioned last time is still a thing, but thankfully him and my mom did come up and visit me last weekend, which was planned way before we got his test results back. So it wasn't like he's not doing great, so he'll come up to visit. It was just like, it just happened to work out that way. So I got to see them this last weekend, which, it's just really nice, when you know someone you love is not doing super well health-wise and you don't really know what the future holds for them. Just like any second that you get to spend with them just feels precious and it just a little bit more meaningful. So it was really nice. Plus I also finalized most of my holiday plans this last week, and I have things to look forward to in terms of seeing my family throughout the end of the year. So things are just kind of, weirdly looking up, even though there are some sad things happening as well.
Well, but the inquiring minds want to know a few things. Did your parents see your couch, and what did they think?
My mom did. My father, there are lots of health things in general with my father. One of them that is not new, but is very difficult in general, is that he only has one functioning lung. And I live on the second floor in a old building without an elevator. So when they come to visit, when they come to visit, he doesn't tend to come up to my apartment because it's just very, very physically taxing on him. And so this was no exception. I wanted him to come up. I wanted him to see it, but it's just a lot for him. So, he just got to hear about it from my mom. But my mom came up, she saw my couch, she loved it, she thought it was perfect. She thought that the new setup was really good because I've basically redone my entire living room. And so it was highly highly well received. And we also went to a bunch of really amazing restaurants that I took them to that we all enjoyed. So I have so much leftovers in my fridge that I'm gonna be eating good for at least a week. So,
ooh, what was their favorite restaurant?
There's a new sushi place that I discovered pretty recently. That's like a sushi and Tibetan place.
Okay.
I had ordered in from them before, but I'd never gone into the restaurant. So I took them to the actual restaurant over the weekend, and they have the best spicy tuna roll I have ever eaten in my entire life. And every other piece of sushi I've gotten there is amazing too, but I literally I don't know what they must put some crack in it or something. It's just so, I don't know what it is.
I was gonna say some kind of illicit drug in it,
Yeah, I don't know. It's just literally I'm a sushi fiend. Sushi is one of my favorite restaurants. Sushi is one of my favorite foods, and Minneapolis is such a big city. We have so many different options to choose from for sushi, so I tend to try to order from different places pretty often so I can try the different options. And this one is by far my favorite. I think I found my sushi place. So,
oh, good.
It's called Momo Sushi, by the way. Momo Sushi. Momo is a Tibetan food, it's like a sushi Tibetan place. But if you're in Minneapolis, try out Momo Sushi. I highly recommend.
Well, speaking of food, this weekend, Seth and I went to one of actually my favorite places to eat here in San Antonio. It's called Brasserie Montreux, and it's a French restaurant.
Fancy.
Of course. We had the French onion soup from scratch, which was muy delicioso. And we had these poached pears in red wine with spices, and
that sounds so good.
And vanilla ice cream, and this kind of like a lace cookie, but made with granola or something.
Ooh.
Or it was so good.
Yeah, that sounds That sounds delightful. Did you have escargot?
No, gross.
I
Like, I am
actually
5 years
like
old.
I actually like escargot. I'm a weirdo, and when I go get French cuisine in any form, I have to have escargot. I
Well, when
love
you
it.
come visit me in San Antonio, I'll take you and I'll pay for it. But
Oh
until
my
then.
gosh, that is an offer that I will not be able to refuse. Thank you.
um, oh, and then I had a French 95, which is bourbon, sparkling wine, and lemon. So good.
Mm,
So good.
man,
I was like,
you're a fancy bitch.
I am. I am. I will pay $8 for French onion soup. Yes, I will.
I mean, that's fair. I think that's a fair thing to do.
I mean, I went to like La Madeleine the other day with my mom when she was here, and their French onion soup was $6, and it comes from a can. You know what I mean? Like, I'd rather
Yeah,
pay $8.
that is
Oh,
very
and they
fair.
topped it with mozzarella cheese. Like, this
Mm,
like French place tops it with Gruyere cheese, which is
ooh,
actual expensive cheese. You know what? I'll take it.
yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
I'm just like, how is like a soup that like came in a can $6?
I know.
Well, you know, as you know, because of Twitter.com, uh, Olivia is teething, and you and I Googled how long teething lasts, and
Google
Google first said,
Google is misleading. You okay, people, if you type in how long does teething last, the first thing Google comes up with is 8 days. It does not specify that that is per tooth. I was like, "Oh good, you only have to deal with this for 8 days, Adri." She's like, "That's not fucking right."
like, that doesn't sound right, guys. And so then we did a little bit more sleuthing, guys, and it turns out that it starts at 6 months, which she is like almost 7 months, right? So anywhere from 6 months to what,
I think it was
32 months?
yeah, it's like it starts between ages 6 to 10 months and then it lasts until ages 25 to 33 months.
Yeah, and I was like, yeah, it sounds great. Thanks, Google.
Yeah, that's not 8 days, Google. Wow.
Oh, so if any of you have any tips on dealing with a teething baby, please send them my way because I am on my last nerve.
I
I
feel
don't know.
like when you watch media, which is basically all I do,
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like they always talk about like putting alcohol on their gums or,
Oh yeah, yeah. Like yeah, but that's like
that's not healthy.
1950s.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, get your baby drunk. That's the answer.
yeah, like Don Draper did that. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
we're not there.
Yeah. No, exactly.
I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm just like giving my baby a shot of tequila and then like crushing a lime in her mouth. Like
Don't forget the salt lick.
just getting her ready for like those partying days.
Yeah, when she goes to Cancun on spring break and lives it up.
Yeah, and then sees Ted Cruz there. Anyway, I'm still not over
Oh my
it.
god, Ted Cruz was on The View this week and it was epic. I mean, he has a new book, so he went on to like promote his new book.
Ugh.
And the thing with The View is like they have to bring people from both sides because it's supposed to be, it's supposed to be like inclusive and everybody can talk. Even though whatever conservative they end up having on the panel is always anti-Trump, one way or another. So it was really interesting. Anna Navarro is my fucking idol, I have to tell you. She obliterated him. It was so fun to watch. I want to be Anna Navarro when I grow up.
Well, one day, Helene, we'll get there. All right, we're going to be talking about chapter 15 of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. But before we get there, and before we get to the chapter summary, Helene, let's talk a bit about two controversial figures in the media for different reasons. One, let's talk about Kanye West and his Adidas contract being canceled finally.
I have to ask because you've said this a few times off mic too. Uh, is there a reason that you believe that it's pronounced Adidas?
That's how I've always heard it, but if it could be Adidas, I
Okay,
don't.
I
Yeah.
thought I was wrong when you started saying it so confidently, and I was like, "Am I wrong?" But I always thought it was Adidas.
It's probably. What if it's potato? Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a right or wrong. I just thought I was like, maybe she knows something I
I'll go.
don't.
I'll go with yours. You're the native English speaker. I'm just.
I just assumed maybe you knew something I didn't know. I was like, maybe she
It's
knows.
totally fine. Yeah. So Adidas, he got his contract pulled
Yes.
and Yeezy's off the store. Thank God. Terrible fashion all around anyway. So
Yeah, he
I believe
no
it took them
longer.
about 4 weeks to pull his stuff and cancel his contract. I'm sure there are a lot of legalities involved, but
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there are probably Jewish people that work on at Adidas that are like, "Fuck no, I'm not doing this anymore." I mean, good news, he went from a billionaire to a multimillionaire. Which I mean, he's still a multimillionaire, but at least he's no longer a billionaire. All I can say is consequences for your actions, man, and I'm glad that he's seeing consequences, and I wish that people like J.K. Rowling would see consequences. Um,
same.
you know,
The only
why
I think the
can someone big pull out of a contract with J.K. Rowling? Maybe that would be nice. Let's do that.
that would be great. That would be great, but who knows? I hope more people see consequences for their hate speech is like what I wanted to say about this.
Yeah.
The other person who is making headlines recently, so as of we're recording Wednesday, October 26th, as of last night, Dr. Oz, popularized by one Oprah Winfrey, which, like, sorry, Oprah, you really bet on the wrong horse there, who is running
Probably
for
regrets
Senate.
that.
Yeah, who's running for Senate in Pennsylvania, said on the debate stage that an abortion decision should be between a woman, her doctor, and local political leaders.
Yeah. I I don't want politicians in my vagina.
No, thank you. Also, like, way to say the quiet part out loud, Oz, you know?
Yeah. So, like, why aren't erectile dysfunction decisions between a man, his doctor, and their political leaders?
Yeah, that's what I want to know. Like, every time you get, like, a prescription for, like, Viagra, right? Like, shouldn't a political leader
I
weigh in on
mean,
that decision?
God made you that way. If God doesn't want you to have an erection, I think that you should listen to him.
Agreed. It's just a lot of these it's such a slippery slope of, like, well, it's a medical, like, it's a medical decision but not really. And it's like, well, what about, like, diabetes, right? Like, are you going to deny people medicine to manage their
Well,
diabetes?
I
You
mean,
know, like
insulin is extremely expensive, so kind of, yeah. um, uh,
um
they're gonna limit, you know, people who have insecure incomes access to
I mean,
insulin
they
at least.
already do by pricing them out, but, like,
Yeah,
I just mean in just prescribing it at this point,
yeah, yeah,
because that's what they're doing anyway.
yeah.
Um, and they're going to be like, it's such a slippery slope of, like, oh, we're not going to make you any eyeglasses because that's God's will.
Right.
You know, it just goes on and on and on.
I I don't personally like having less rights than I did a year ago. And I'm pretty sure.
I don't like having less rights than the year I was born.
Yeah,
Like, isn't
yeah,
that insane? It's not even like I was granted these rights last year and then they got taken away. No, we were born with these rights.
yeah. It's you don't expect to see people's rights taken away in your lifetime. if anything, you should expect to see more people gain more rights.
Yeah, agreed.
So I don't think limiting a person's body or a person's agency is ever a political issue and ever should be. I mean, obviously, I think we all agree. So it's just ridiculous. It's a ridiculous statement. And yeah, stop saying the quiet part out loud and stop doing the quiet part. Stop
Just,
making it like legal to do the quiet part.
I feel like in all of this, right, a lot of this has to do with, hey guys, let's grow some empathy for other human beings. Abolish white supremacy and all it stands for, and also the patriarchy while we're at it.
Yeah, fuck the patriarchy.
And white supremacy, like they're just like holding hands.
They go hand in hand, 100%. Yeah.
And I hate it. I hate it so much. Anyway, I mean, that's listeners of this podcast are shocked that I said this. Also, if you're new here, welcome.
Right. I don't know why you're starting on the 15th chapter of the last book, but if you are, I hope that, you get a good sense of who we are and what we believe. And you will also get a good sense in this episode about my hatred for Ron, which is
evergreen and everlasting.
And very prevalent in this chapter.
All right, let's get into it. What happens in this chapter, Helene?
Well, Adri, thanks for asking. This is the one where, after weeks of being on the run and not making any progress in their hunt for Horcruxes, the trio starts deteriorating, I cannot say that word, and begins to lose sight of their mission. One night, another group of fugitives consisting of 2 goblins, Griphook and Gornuk, a wizard named Dirk Cresswell, Ted Tonks, and their friend Dean Thomas, build their camp near where the trio is hiding. Because of this, Harry, Ron, and Hermione overhear some news about what's been going on in the wizarding world in their absence, including some enlightening facts about the Sword of Gryffindor that will help them on their mission. Before they can get too excited, though, Ron fucks everything up. Ron decides this isn't what he signed up for and abandons his friends to finish Voldemort on their own. Womp womp.
Well,
this is like this is on my top 5 list of why I hate Ron Weasley. People ask, how can you hate Ron? He's such a good character. This is one of the fucking reasons I hate Ron. One of the main reasons. This chapter is one of the main reasons.
Okay, I mean, fair. I'm not gonna disagree with you on this one. He's a really terrible person in this one.
Yeah, he's bad. He fucks up. He's the worst.
Well, Helene, while you were reading this chapter and fully remembering what ignited your passion of hatred for Ron and having that flame rekindled in your being, if it ever went out, I don't think it ever goes out for you. What politic did you think this chapter was showcasing?
Yeah, I went with trust this time. So trust is, I like to define my terms. So trust is a firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something. That's just the basic definition of trust. This chapter definitely focuses a bit more on the loss or lack of trust between multiple different parties in this chapter. So, I mean, mainly, like, early on in the chapter, we kind of start to see that Hermione and Ron have started to lose their trust in Harry's abilities to, like, lead the mission and get them to, like, any progress whatsoever. And they kind of start to lose trust that he has any idea of what he's doing, and they just start to, question him. But we also see, once we get like that part where all of the fugitives, like, Ted, Tonks, and Dirk Questwell, and Dean Thomas, and like the goblins and everything are making camp outside of the trio's tent, we see that the goblins are expressing just an overall overarching, really big mistrust for just the wizarding world as a whole, for wizards. And they kind of have this like goblin only mentality, like we only trust our own kind, to like we're the only ones that look out for us, we're the only ones that have our best interest at heart kind of thing. And then in that same kind of conversation, we do see Dean Thomas, which is who is obviously an old-time friend of the trio, and then Ted Tonks express deep trust in Harry as a person, but also like his abilities when questioned by Dirk Cresswell, because Dirk is like, oh well, you know, what the fuck is Harry doing? Like he like left. He should be the face of a rebellion. And Ted and Dean are like, I mean, he's been able to survive this long, so I trust that he knows what he's doing, right? Like they trust him, which is sadly something that his own friends seem to be having trouble with, right? These two
Yeah.
people who are completely removed from the situation are able to trust Harry and his abilities, while his two closest friends and confidants are having trouble reaching that same level of trust with him at the moment. But of course, the biggest display of mistrust or lack of trust that we see in the chapter is at the end with Mr. Ronald Billius Weasley, because we see he loses trust that Harry has his or his family's best interest at heart, and he then, by leaving, breaks Hermione and Harry's trust as their friend by abandoning them. So I think a lot of the reason that Ron leaves is like there's no trust there anymore between, like, from him or towards him, especially after he leaves. So it's a shit show.
Well, and maybe this is something that you've been also thinking about, but I wondered if we didn't say that quiet part out loud. Like Harry himself starts to waver in his own trust towards himself. Like there's like moments in this chapter where like whether it's like he can't create a Patronus, whether it's he's like, oh, I see them talking behind my back, they probably think I don't know what I'm doing. I think there's a Horcrux at Hogwarts, but they won't listen to me, maybe they're right. Like he starts like to waver in the trust that he has towards himself to be able to complete the mission.
Yeah, I kind of think that Harry never fully did trust himself the whole time.
Yeah, but like we see it like rise and fall.
Yeah,
is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, like Harry basically, like, he didn't really think that he knew what he was doing the whole time.
Well, I don't think he ever thinks that he's the chosen one.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't think he's out there being like, look at me, I'm the chosen one. But like the level of trust or confidence, if we want to call it that he has in himself really starts to tank in this chapter.
Yeah, I think it's definitely not helped by the fact that the people who have been the ones consistently to trust him when he doesn't trust himself are wavering in that in a big way. Like Ron, I guess another, so the other one of the other main reason why I don't like Ron is because of because of what happened not only in this chapter but in the Goblet of Fire, right? Where Ron also doesn't believe that Harry has his best interest at heart and believes that Harry is like this selfish person, and entered the tournament and didn't tell him and is lying to him or whatever. Like he doesn't believe Harry. He doesn't trust Harry when Harry says that he didn't do this thing, right? So other than those two big times where Ron doesn't trust Harry for some unfathomable reason, Ron usually does have an unwavering trust for Harry. And Harry tends to has learned to rely on that, right? Like when Harry doesn't like in the Order of the Phoenix, when Ron and Hermione are like, you need to lead the DA because you know what you're doing, like we trust you to teach us or whatever. Harry's like, I don't fucking know what I'm doing. I don't have anything to offer. I don't have, and they're like, we trust you to do this, right? Like we have the faith in you that you are going to do a good job. And that's something that he has always learned to rely on them for, right? Like even when he doesn't have faith in himself, they have faith in him and his abilities. And that's what's lacking here is like the two people who seemingly have the most faith in him the whole series are starting to like not be able to rely on him.
Well, and that also gets me thinking about the nature of trust and how we act towards people is often a reflection of the people that we are internally at that moment. So, like when we are distrustful of others, sometimes it's because we are either have been either like grievously injured in the past by other people, or because we are not trustworthy ourselves.
Like we're projecting, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, like, Ted being like super trustful of Harry shows that he's like a person who is confident in himself and his own decision making. And Ron thinking that Harry is selfish and he doesn't know what he's doing is a projection of Ron himself.
Yeah. Yeah. And Ron's taking all of his own insecurities, his own shortcomings, and pushing that on Harry and making it Harry's problem.
Correct.
So that he doesn't feel like he's, the one to blame in all of this, which sucks.
Yeah, does. So my politic is obviously different than yours this time because it's the politics of privilege.
Hell yeah.
So the way that I thought of this politic for this chapter specifically is, that idea of like privilege comes in many ways and forms. And just because, for example, I'm a person of color, that doesn't mean I don't have inherent privileges in life. And
right.
even
Yeah.
in a white supremacist society, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, well, I grew up middle class. Like that is more privileged than someone who has my exact same background and grew up like impoverished.
Right.
Or someone who grew up with like one parent instead of two, or like these layers of privilege.
Right.
And we can see these layers of privilege in this chapter because of, in many ways, right? Like they're in the run, but like only one of them is well equipped to deal with like hunger. The other two struggle at various degrees with hunger, and like that is a very physical manifestation of their privilege. And like I have this quote that I found is like, for many if not all minority groups, politics govern their lives and well-being. Politics determine whether or not they have to stand in front of the Capitol building and ask to stay in a country that they've lived in since they were children. Politics govern whether or not they can get married, own a home, or get a job, based solely on their sexual preference or gender identity. Politics can dictate if a person's religion will ban them from their home country and label them as a terrorist. Some individuals don't get the choice to ignore politics. So it's that idea of like,
yeah,
people who like are the most privileged can say like, oh, I don't want to get into politics, I don't want to talk politics, when like for some people just existing is an inherently political act.
Yeah, 100%.
So the trio right now are in like a position in which they have been stripped away from like any privileges, temporary or otherwise, that they had at Hogwarts because they cannot afford to ignore the political climate that they're in.
100%. Yeah.
So that's how I saw my politic. But can you tell me what quote you chose for your politic?
Yeah. It's a little lengthy, but here we go. Sorry, let me try it over. 1 second. Ooh, okay. We thought you knew what you were doing, shouted Ron, standing up, and his words pierced Harry like scalding knives. We thought Dumbledore had told you what to do. We thought you had a real plan. Ron, said Hermione, this time clearly audible over the rain thundering on the tent roof. But again, he ignored her. Well, sorry to let you down, said Harry, his voice quite calm, even though he felt hollow, inadequate. I've been straight with you from the start. I told you everything Dumbledore told me, and in case you haven't noticed, we found one Horcrux. Yeah, and we're about as near getting rid of it as we are to finding the rest of them. Nowhere effing near, in other words. Take off the locket, Ron, Hermione said, her voice unusually high. Please take it off. You wouldn't be talking like this if you hadn't been wearing it all day. Yeah, he would, said Harry, who did not want excuses made for Ron. Do you think I haven't noticed the two of you whispering behind my back? Do you think I didn't guess you were thinking this stuff? Harry, we weren't. Don't lie, Ron hurled at her. You said it too. You said you were disappointed. You said you thought he'd had a bit more to go on than. I didn't say it like that, Harry. I didn't, she cried. I mean, this it's obviously just it illustrates the trust breaking down between all three of them, right? Like,
Yeah,
Ron
absolutely.
Ron is expressing like, you know, we we thought you know you were what you we thought you knew what you were doing, and like now we can't trust that you do. And Harry is saying, you know, like, well, you know what you signed up for, and the fact that you're upset about it means that, like, you know, you don't have trust in me and I don't have trust in you to believe in me anymore, which sucks. And then obviously, like, Hermione is like trying to figure this all out and trying to like play both sides, which is just breaking down in front of our eyes. It's hard. It's probably the most difficult position we've seen the trio in the whole series.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like the worst.
Yeah. What about you? What about privilege?
Okay, so this I briefly mentioned this earlier. Let's get into it. This was their first encounter with the fact that a full stomach meant good spirits. An empty one, bickering and gloom. Harry was least surprised by this because he has suffered periods of near starvation at the Dursleys. Hermione bore up reasonably well on those nights when they managed to scavenge nothing but berries or stale biscuits, her temper perhaps a little shorter than usual, and her silences rather dour. Ron, however, had always been used to 3 delicious meals a day, courtesy of his mother or the Hogwarts house elves, and hunger made him both unreasonable and irascible. Whenever lack of food coincided with Ron's turn to wear the Horcrux, he became downright unpleasant. So, like, that other part of, like, privilege layers is, like, them wearing the Horcrux just makes them, like, lose certain, like, emotional, like, ground slash privilege. And, like, Ron is obviously the one who is the best equipped for this, like, the least equipped to deal with this, because he's, like, the, like, in the wizarding world at the within the three of them, he is like the cis hetero white male to like Hermione and Harry's like maybe like a person of color or a woman or even a woman of color. You know, like that
Yeah,
doesn't mean that the cis hetero white man is not like poor, right? Like I imagine Draco Malfoy being like even worse than Ron in this same situation, right? Because he has
oh,
fallen
totally.
even lower, right? But that
Yeah.
doesn't make Ron the most privileged person in this situation.
Yeah, it's actually interesting, like, thinking about where they both where all three of them kind of have and lack privileges, and how they
Correct.
kind of like I don't want to say complement each other, but like they kind of, I don't know, work together. So for example, Ron is a white male, straight cis white male who who is pure blood, doesn't have to worry
Correct.
about being discriminated based on his blood status or being a muggle or whatever. And he has a family who loves him, and a mother who cares and feeds him and makes sure he
Mm-hmm.
has 3 meals a day. But he is poor. He doesn't have his family is very insecure in terms of their income, and he doesn't have a lot of extra, spending cash. And that's like a big sore point for him, right? Like he is always kind of jealous of Harry, who, while he doesn't have literally like 90% of the things that I just listed out for Ron, he does have money. He doesn't
Yeah.
have so Harry's privileged in the fact that he has money, but he doesn't have a family. He
Mm-hmm.
grew up insecure, like food insecure. He he doesn't like there's
He
lots of
doesn't have the privilege of having grown up in the wizarding world as well, so
right.
he lacks a lot of the information even going into Hogwarts of like what the
Yes.
wizarding world is, how to navigate the wizarding world and all of that.
Right. And then Hermione kind of has like a weird mixture of she has a family, her family seems to be well enough off that they're not insecure with their income. They've had food. She never had to worry about food her whole life. But she is a muggle born. She doesn't have she's discriminated on her blood status in terms of like where we are right now in the wizarding world and the politics going on with the ministry. And she's a woman, which
Mm-hmm.
also comes with its own set of like lack of privileges and things that she has to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So it's weird because like they all kind of have these privileges that don't that like fill each other's in, right? It's weird. It's very
Yeah,
strange.
exactly. So like if you just put all the privileges in a pot, right? And like like don't take anything like out, it's basically you have Draco Malfoy.
Yeah, I mean like you put them all together, they're one very privileged human being, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it's
Um,
like if you think of a like, okay, so blood status, like pure, right? A loving family, like in air quotes,
yeah,
not like
money.
rich,
Yeah, money.
rich, all the
Education.
privilege,
Uh,
education, uh, grew up in the wizarding world,
yeah,
like has like all these things. So it's like, oh, so you mean Draco, right? Like,
yeah. I guess that's a good way to think about it. But yeah, I mean, I think that your politic is very apt in terms of it highlights Ron's privilege in a way that I feel like doesn't get talked about a lot. Because
mm-hmm,
I feel like when we're
mm-hmm,
talking about Ron, we're usually focusing on the things that he lacks because he
correct.
he like kind of makes those things a defining thing about himself. Like the fact that he doesn't have money or that he's overshadowed by his siblings or like all of these things, like he tends to focus on those things. But I feel like he doesn't sit around and think about how privileged he is or how lucky he is to have a family or how lucky he is to have you know love, people who love him and like a mother who dotes on him. And you know it's like there's a part in this chapter where Ron says something, and I can't remember exactly what it is, but Harry has to remind him that he doesn't have parents. Do you know
Yeah,
what I'm talking about? I can't remember the exact
yeah.
situation. And Ron is just like, okay, well, like he just brushes it off. He's like, oh well, who fucking cares?
One of the
Like,
things that I wanted to make sure that we briefly touched on is the fact that I am not saying that, oh, see, like Harry's upbringing made him more resilient towards this trauma. Like, not at all. Like, I am not blaming any of the victims here for like not having food and dealing with food insecurity in very different ways,
yeah.
right? Because I hate when people are like, "Oh, but see, that trauma made you resilient and made you like the tough person." And I was like, "No, I survived trauma. That doesn't make me any better than anyone. It just makes me someone who survived, right? And like I am thankful that I
Well,
survived
the thing
certain
is,
trauma.
trauma doesn't make you resilient. You make you resilient, right? Like, because there are
Correct. It's
many
like
people.
so I survived despite the trauma,
Yeah,
not because of it.
there are many people who
So
go through trauma and come out not better for it. Like Snape, for example, he went through trauma
correct.
and, and he did
So
not become
it's
resilient.
another way of it's another way of victim blaming is what I'm
Mhm.
trying to say. Like,
Mhm.
because when people were like, but see, didn't it make you stronger? It's like, no, I survived it and I am stronger despite it happening to me,
Yeah.
not because it happened to me. So
Totally.
that being said, I thought that we could have this conversation about privilege because that scenario or like the whole chapter just displays how taking away a privilege, whether it's something that you had since you were born, like Ron, or something that you've had just up to like it was recent, like Harry, right, can affect you in different ways and highlight inequities in people's situation, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
privilege is not just having money, and privilege is not being just white, and privilege is not like there are many layers to privilege. I have been told in my life, like, oh, but you are white passing, so that is a privilege. And I'm like, yeah, completely a privilege, but also my like first language is in English, so that usually others me in other ways that it doesn't other people of color whose first language is English, right? So like there are many layers to privilege, and I'm not saying one is like my my burdens are more than anyone else's, right? That's not what I mean at all. But I am saying that don't like negate
Yeah.
that there are struggles that we all carry. Like just
Mhm.
because you know you're white doesn't mean that your life is magical, right? It makes it easier
Yeah.
for some way in some ways, but it can also like you can also have other factors in your life that severely impact your way of life. Like you could be like disabled, you could be food insecure, you like there's so many other things.
Yeah. It's something that I've personally struggled a lot with being Jewish too, because like obviously I I don't have things when a person looks at me, they don't automatically know I'm Jewish. I don't. It's not something that people can like look at you and make snap judgments about. Uh,
Yeah.
I have a lot.
Unlike some of the race type
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. Like I have a. It comes with a lot of privileges. But also like it comes with a lot of discrimination and it comes with a lot of prejudice. But it's a different level, and I understand that I have a lot more privileges than other people who experience very similar prejudices. But then then it also makes me struggle with like just because other people. This is something that I've struggled with my whole life in
Okay.
all aspects of my life, and not just being Jewish. Just having to convince myself that just because other people have it worse does not mean that my problems matter less. And this is something I had to say to my mom, or like when she was visiting me this weekend, because like I was talking about some frustrations I've been having at work, and then I went to talk about two of my coworkers who are still contracted and not full time, and they've been and our management has been taking their sweet ass time making them full time. And so my mom was like, "Well, see, you're full time. You have that job security. They don't. They have it worse. You shouldn't complain." And I'm sitting here like, "Mom, I can complain. Just because they have it worse doesn't mean that I don't have it bad too.
Yeah.
Like my problems still matter even though other people are suffering more than I am." And that's something that is hard for almost everyone to
No,
to
yeah.
struggle with.
Well, I think there's like this way of thinking like your mom has that, my mom has that. It might be of a generation, right? Of like,
Possibly.
well, someone else always has it worse than you. I'm like, yeah, that's right. And if we just stayed like that and didn't do anything to help ourselves or even help others,
Yeah.
that is such a great way of enabling complacency and the status quo,
Yeah.
right? Like, oh, so for example, oh, Trump got elected. Well, there are other countries in the world that have actual dictators. At least this is like kind of a democracy. Well, no shit, Sherlock, but I don't like be having Trump elected.
Yeah, like, it helps every once in a while to have perspective. Like, those types of things give you perspective, which is helpful, right? Like, okay, what I'm going through sucks right now. And it's good to think so every once in a while, of all the other people that have it worse, it gives you perspective, and that maybe your problems aren't, as bad as other people's, but it should not belittle your what you're going through in any
Well,
way.
it shouldn't invalidate your experiences, right? So,
No.
like, to say, like, okay, we get perspective from it. Fine. Fantastic. Great. Okay, but also now that I have gotten the perspective, I can still be mad about it and I can still choose to do something about it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Because if not, then what are we going to do? Sit back and be like, well, could be worse. I'm not going to do anything about it.
Right. Yeah. So just because you have certain privileges and other people don't have those same privileges doesn't mean that your experience is not difficult for you. It might be less difficult if other people were in your position, for
You
them,
know?
because they have different experiences and different tools and different, you know things that they've gone through in their life that might have prepared them differently than you, but
So,
they are not you.
the last thing I want to say about this is what I tell like my mom all the time because she's like, well, it could be worse. And it's like, yeah, and I am grateful for everything that I have. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But also, guess what? It could be so much better.
Yeah.
Like, I could be a billionaire right now.
Just
And
because it
look
could
at
be
me.
worse doesn't mean that it shouldn't be better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be much worse, but also guess what? It could be so much better right now.
Yeah. Don't stop wanting things to be better just because it could be worse. Like,
Exactly.
come on.
You're welcome, everyone. Words of wisdom from Helene Carp.
And you. Come on. You said a lot there that I think was very enlightening.
Whatever. Anyway. I feel like we've got the same character for our politic
We
for
do.
different reasons.
We do. We have
Okay.
the same character. Can you
All
guys
right.
guess who it is?
So our character is Ronald Weasley. On mine, real quickly, I've already said why. I mean,
Yeah.
he's the cis white man who has like the most privilege in the situation and whose fault is the most evident in his temperament, right? So
Yeah.
like he's not used to not having this privilege, so now he's like throwing temper tantrums.
Yeah, I also want to say the just really quick, the line in my quote where where Hermione's asking Ron to take off the locket and is like trying to make excuses for him and saying like you wouldn't be acting this way if you weren't wearing the locket, and where Harry specifically thinks I don't want to make excuses for Ron, he totally would be acting this way if he wasn't wearing the locket. I think that just kind of speaks to the privilege a little bit as well. I don't exactly know how what I like the words I'm trying to say, but do you understand what I'm saying with like just because something is there might be an outside force that's making it a little bit more difficult for him.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean that he wouldn't have thought those things, maybe. Like,
Right.
now he's saying them out loud, but he definitely
It's
thought
kind
them.
of it's kind of like Trump, right? Like the locket is Trump, right? Like it is emboldening you
Yeah, it's
to
emboldening the to say the quiet part out loud.
yes. But that doesn't mean you didn't always think the quiet part.
So are we saying that Trump is a Horcrux? Because I am here for it.
I mean, sure, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
He can be the snake. Uh, so
Oh
yeah,
God.
mine is also Ron. Also for reasons that I've sort of touched on, but he is both. He both loses trust for Harry and Hermione a little bit, but then also gets has his like breaks his friends' trusts towards him by leaving. Uh, so trust is just really not a good thing, like not working in his favor in this chapter, basically. TLDR.
All right. So let's go to our next segment, which is how do we see each other's politics in the series?
Yeah.
And Helene, I have to say, the politics of trust is pretty big in the series. Like, there's trust all around. Sometimes Dumbledore trusts people too much.
Yeah, there's mistrust all around as well.
Yeah, of course. And Hagrid is a big ball of trust that
he trusts way too easily.
It's very evident in like book 1. Like, really, for a dragon egg, Hagrid?
Yeah. Putting trust in the wrong people is an issue throughout the series.
Ginny trusting the diary.
Yeah.
Harry trusting the diary in chamber.
Yeah.
Mistrust of Sirius Black.
Yes. Harry's just basic distrust of Snape the whole series as well.
Correct. And Goblet, Ron's distrust of Harry, like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And also the slight distrust of others wizarding schools. There's that thread of like, oh, foreigners in the series, you know?
Yeah.
In Goblet. And then in Order, there's like distrust of Harry because, you know, Cedric's death.
Yeah.
And what am I missing? Half-Blood Prince. Harry's trust in like the Half-Blood Prince is his notes.
Yeah.
And Hermione's actual distrust of them.
Yeah, like blindly trusting this person in this book that you don't know anything about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, and we talked about privilege, your politic of privilege very much in terms of Draco Malfoy, the Malfoys in general, Draco Malfoy specifically. He does not show up in this chapter. But we did talk about him in terms of being like the pinnacle of privilege in the series. And I think that that's probably the best example of privilege throughout the series is people like Draco, just like the Malfoys and Death Eaters in general, and like Umbridge and Voldemort, honestly.
Well, but I was thinking about this, like, you know how we spoke about all the privileges and like lack of privileges that the trio has? Like, if you put all the privileges in one cauldron, you would get Draco Malfoy, but if you put the lack of privileges in another cauldron that the trio have, you get Voldemort, which is such an interesting thing to think about. Because he grew up in an orphanage, food insecurity. He wasn't like, he was cruel, right? But like if we strip like his cruelty away from his person, like if we just think about privileges and lack of privileges, like he has the lack of privileges that the trio has. Like he has the lack of parents that Harry has. He has the lack of reliable income that Ron has. He grew up in the Muggle world like Hermione and Harry. Like the only thing he doesn't have, like
he's not a woman.
He's not a woman, but like basically everything else.
Yeah, you're right.
And like obviously does not make him a terrible person that he doesn't have privilege. Obviously,
no, yeah. I think if anything, it's probably his lack of privileges that drove him to wanting everything
power
that he
at any cost.
Power at any cost. Wanting all the things he wants and doing ungodly things to get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously not every person who lacks those privileges is going to choose the same life path.
Yeah, we just don't have any other, to me, right? Like, I'm trying to think, like, do we have any other example of someone who lacks, like, those same privileges?
I mean, maybe, like, Dobby, maybe?
Okay, wizard. I mean,
yeah, I was gonna say
like
we don't know, like,
yeah,
I was gonna say we don't know like Dobby's childhood or whatever, but like
well, he was enslaved. He's a slave. Of course, he lacks all the privileges. Exactly, but like a wizard.
Yes, no, that's okay.
Fine, a witch or wizard.
That's a good clarifier to put on.
I mean, obviously, Dobby.
Yeah, I mean,
all the privileges,
right. Yeah.
Oh, what's the name of the girl house elf? Oh my god, I forgot her name.
Winky.
Winky. Poor baby.
Yeah. Winky the house elf.
All right. Speaking of Voldemort and slavery, let's go to our Dementors this chapter.
I think
What
we
we
have the
didn't like in the
same.
chapter.
I think we have the same Dementor this
Of
chapter.
course, we have the same one.
I wasn't sure you were gonna say the one that I said. Honestly, I'm glad to see you did because I feel
just
feel
because I am a
understood.
listen, just because I am a Ron apologist doesn't mean that I don't think he's trash for doing certain things.
Yeah, you're not a Ron
Listen, it's like
apologist in this chapter, so
it's okay. It's like being straight for me, you know. Like just because I like men doesn't mean that I can't admit that they are trash.
yeah,
And if sexuality was really a choice, I don't think I choose men.
100%. I agree. Yeah, just
Like
because I
I was
like
born
men,
this way, and I'm sorry.
just because I like men doesn't mean I like men. Like,
Am I right?
right? Uh, and a particular man that I don't like is Ron.
Okay, tell us all about it, Helene.
Yeah, no, my Dementor is Ron. Just Ron. I mean, but there are specific things, obviously. So, like the way he treats his friends in this chapter, awful, awful. One of the reasons that it's just so against every like basic instinct. Like I'm an Enneagram 2. Like friendship is like the most important thing to me. Relationships, making sure that other people like can trust me and that I trust them implicitly, and this the way that he treats his friends, the people who have been there for him this entire time, like, oh, it breaks me. And the fact that he leaves, I hate that he leaves. That's the biggest fucking like mark against him the entire series, is him leaving in this chapter, in this book, for me personally. But a specific moment as well in this chapter, like an actual part in the chapter, was him being sexist, which I feel like we don't see very often, honestly. I mean, we see it sometimes. But he is like blatantly sexist in this chapter.
Yeah, no, when he said that his mom could conjure up da 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 da, and he let Hermione do all the cooking all the time.
He 100% expects Hermione to just handle all the food. Just because
And the logistics.
yeah, because she's a woman. And he when she calls him out for it, right? But when she does that, he like hides behind, oh, well, it's just because you're the best at magic. It's not because you're a woman. It's because you're the best at magic.
And this is called, there's a term for this, like it's part of sexism,
Mm-hmm.
and it's called weaponized incompetence. And that is when a man makes a woman do a large bulk of domestic labor or any other type of labor by complimenting her and saying, well, you just do it so much better than I do. Or by like doing something very poorly so that the woman does it for him and is like, see, this is the way it's done. He's like, well, if I can't do it right, why don't you do it from now on?
Right. Yeah. It's just like, obviously in this particular instance too, like you do not need to have good magical ability to make food. That is not something that is necessary in preparation or even like securing of food.
Well, those like dudes who were like camping nearby did just well to like procure salmon for themselves. So clearly it's not a
like, I was thinking that when that happened, I was
thing.
like, I wonder if the trio like were like, did we think about just saying Accio salmon? Like,
yeah, literally my thought as well. Like
did they just not think of that? Because they were talking about how they were eating some like gross gray like fish. Obviously not
but
salmon.
also like obviously not salmon, and also like, Harry, my dude, is it because it wasn't Expelliarmus? You know what I mean?
Right,
like,
no, exactly. But and I think that part of this sexism that we see by Ron also is another like, it's another like show of his privilege, right? Because he he grew up in a house where his mom, a woman, always took care of the food. She always
Yeah.
provided food for everyone in the family, mostly men. Um, and I'm sure that
And I am hoping,
Ginny probably helped her out in the kitchen. I wouldn't be
well, you know
surprised.
what? And I'm hoping that that was her choice. I am hoping that Molly Weasley chose that life for herself
I also
and it
yeah,
wasn't thrust upon her.
I would hope so too. And I kind of feel like that might be the case. I have just a feeling that, you know, she probably if she didn't choose it, she enjoys it. Um at, I would hope. We don't know.
I
But
would hope. But we don't hear that. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, we can't just assume. But yeah, so I mean, when you're growing up in a household where women always provide for the men, like that like I guess worldview permeates into what you expect as an adult.
Hmm.
So
Well, you said everything I was going to say. So let's move on to the chocolate. Um, my chocolate, I want to get mine out of the way real quick because,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I think my chocolate is part of your chocolate.
Hmm.
Um, Hermione saying the quiet part out loud to Ron, like saying, like, "Hey, dude, you're being sexist." I'm
Hmm.
like,
Yes,
yes, clap, clap,
100%.
like, love you, Hermione. Do it. Stand up for yourself. You got this.
I mean, yeah, yeah. I like whooped when I saw that when she said that. I was like, yeah, Hermione. Fucking. I hope she doesn't take that shit in their marriage. Like, if he try to pull that shit in their marriage, I hope that she just like, you know, said, I'm out. I'm sleeping at my friend's house for 3 days, and you better fucking take that time to think about how much of an asshole you are, and like,
And you better take that time to learn some recipes, bitch.
yeah, like go fucking cook for yourself for 3 days, man. I'll be back later. Uh, that's what I would do.
Also, like, I better have a 5 course meal waiting for me on the third day.
Yeah, yeah, you're gonna cook for me for the next week. Yeah, mine, mine was a couple of things. So Harry standing up for himself, just in all the different ways. Like when Ron is saying like, you don't care about my family, you don't care about Ginny, you don't care that if, like whether or not any of them survive. And like Harry standing up for himself in that instance, and then also when when Ron says like, we thought you'd have a plan, and Harry's like, dude, I fucking told you from the start, like you knew everything I knew. I was straight up with you. You still chose to come. That is on you. That is not on me. Uh, like that, I really liked. And then Hermione really showing like the good parts of like a friendship to me, because like the Hermione is the type of friend that I expect my friends to be. She's the type of friend that I hope to be. She made a promise. She she stood by her word. She told Harry, "Where I'm going to help you. I'm in it. I'm going to do this, and no matter how hard it is, no matter, if we have literally no idea what we're doing, like I promised you I was going to figure this out and be there with you till the very end, and I'm going to do it, even if it's hard." And just,
Yeah.
just doing the thing that Ron couldn't do. It got hard and Ron gave up. It got hard and Ron was like, you know what? This isn't what I thought it was going to be. I am not having a good time. I don't know why Ron thought he would be having a good time. But um but
This isn't fun. Like, this isn't fun anymore.
right. I thought we were going to
Yeah.
be like, being heroic and like defeating Voldemort and stuff. Like you got to do the hard work. You got to do the hard stuff. It's not easy. And Ron
Yeah.
just gave up. So that's mine.
Okay. Fair, 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 fair. Well, every week we ask a question to our listeners. And last time we asked the following question. Ron asks Harry and Hermione to show some respect towards Voldemort. What do you think he meant by that? And what did we get in answers, Helene?
We got a few answers. Number one, or NO1, so I'm guessing it stands for number one. Number one Remus fan on Twitter said, "I'm not sure." And you know what? Same.
Which is why we asked the question, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, honestly.
So I'm
yeah.
glad that we're not the only ones who are confused by it. Like, show some respect.
Yeah. So I mean, like, we didn't get a lot of answers this week, and I think it's because it's a hard question. I don't think people know. I think people were just as confused about what the fuck happened as we were. We were hoping other people would have the answers, and they didn't. Basically.
Well, that makes me feel less alone, though.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's still not great about the author. But we did get two other answers. One of them was from Dream Quaffle on Instagram. They said, respect the rules, not the ruler.
Okay.
Which confuses me a little bit. I don't fully understand.
So, like, respect the societal norms of not saying his name out loud, not the fact that he is actually, like, the puppet master?
Yeah, but who made that rule? Ron made the rule. In this social construct, Ron made the rule.
No, he's observing the rule.
But what the rule is? What the rule is? Don't say his name. Why? What is the rule?
That's the context we have always been missing.
Yeah.
Of like, why is it that even before this time around, people would say you know who instead of Voldemort? Is it because the taboo was in effect also in the last Wizarding War?
Possibly.
Or was it, you know, like that? We're missing some context.
Yeah,
here.
I feel like I always assumed the way that they like frame it, I feel like has always been fear. People didn't say it because they were scared. So that's not a rule. That's a feeling. That
well, that's a societal norm. Yeah, it's not a rule. Yeah. But, you know?
Like, if you're not scared of him, you say his name. If you're scared of him, you don't say his name.
The best way to get around this is do the real Dumbledore move of being like, well, hello, Tom.
Like, right, yeah, just say Tom Riddle instead of Voldemort, yeah. So, I mean, I sort of see what you're saying, Dream Quaffle, and, like, what you think, like, might be. It's just the deeper, like, when you think about it a little bit more, or at least when I think about it a little bit more, I'm not going to speak for you. When I think about it a little bit more, the argument falls apart for me.
Anyway, I feel like we just also need real historical context that is not on the page in the book, right? Yeah. Like, maybe this is discussed in, like, Pottermore or Wizarding World or whatever.
Yeah,
but like, the rule for me is if it is not in the 7 books, then it kind of doesn't matter as much to me. So it's like, it's not there.
And I don't think it helps. It doesn't help. I'll go as far to say it doesn't help that we don't have a real life example that we can, that like is similar, right? We don't have a person where we are too scared to, like, we have people who like just don't say their name, right? Like, people say Hitler, right? Like,
okay, so Voldemort, the whole like thing is, I read somewhere that this was inspired by a mob boss in the 1920s, I believe, and somewhere, that people were so afraid of him they wouldn't say his name out loud.
Okay, so it was fear.
Yeah. Well, that's the author's inspiration.
Yeah. The only thing I could say that might make sense to me when it comes to fear is, and it wouldn't be respecting, like, Harry and, okay, so Ron would be scared, too scared. In this scenario, Ron is too scared to say his name. Ron has the fear and therefore doesn't want to say his name because of fear. However, it wouldn't be respect the rules, it would be respect Ron then, because
respect my fear.
Yeah, like, Ron is scared to say the name, and then in respect to Ron, you don't say the name because you don't want him to be scared.
Yeah, but I don't think that's what Ron meant.
No,
I don't either. Which is what makes this a terrible line.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, the next one is kind of similar. Alex DeGraw on Instagram said, "I don't think he meant respect for Voldemort, rather respect for the victims and danger Voldemort represented." The only problem with this one is that I'm just going to reread the quote. The quote literally says, "Just show you know who some respect, will you?" The quote is not "show you know who's victims some respect." Should
Yeah.
not
No,
It's
and
not
yeah.
"show the situation some respect." Don't like it's literally "show Voldemort respect." That's
So
literally the quote.
I think the thing with this one is because we're reading this again, like we've talked about like 1,000 times before.
Yeah.
We're reading this one chapter at a time, so it forces us to like focus very specifically on the language used.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I don't think that this line has ever been a problem for me up until like literally right now, where I'm reading just like one chapter per week,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? Like you're just like, what?
Yeah.
What do you mean respect, right? And I think for perhaps like a lot of our listeners or a lot of people who've just like read this, like reread it maybe once a year, but like they read through it like straight through. They're not like sitting down after each chapter to think about the contents of the chapter.
Totally.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like it it sounds like, oh no, no, just show like respect for the situation is like, no, 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 that's not what the quote says. Like we read it ten
Man,
thousand times just to
yeah.
make sure it's that what it says.
Yeah, many, many times. I wanted to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding the situation. And like I think that if that's what he meant, I feel like I would have gotten that from the context and I would have
And
accepted that. Yeah.
it is just hands down a terrible line that the author wrote,
Yeah. I think that's
and I don't like it.
yeah. So yeah. Those are the answers we got.
All right, so for this time, we have the following question: whose side are you on in this chapter when Ron decides to leave, Harry or Ron's, and why? Maybe people are on Hermione's side, Helene. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, Hermione doesn't really have a side. Hermione's kind of on Harry's side, right? Like,
Yeah, but like Hermione's trying to be Switzerland about it. You know what I mean?
yeah, I mean, you can relate with Hermione in the situation the most, but I don't think Hermione technically has a side.
Okay,
I
so
could be
pick a
wrong.
side, everyone. Is it
I,
Team Harry or Team Ron?
I mean, obviously, we spent most of the chapter explaining that we are on Harry's side and not Ron's, but I think it's also, I mean, it's obvious that like not everyone always agrees, and I do think that there probably are some good arguments for like on Ron's behalf in this chapter. And honestly, I'm interested to hear what people's arguments on Ron's behalf are, although I most likely will not agree with you.
And that is okay,
um
Helene. We can have love for
yeah,
people we disagree
yeah,
with.
I still want to hear, because I feel like there probably are some good points. I don't think it's in the end it's going to change my mind, but this is a challenge, readers. Make a Ron hater see Ron's side. See, like,
Okay.
please. I am interested to hear what people have to say. But if you are on Harry's side, I'd love to hear why. If you're, especially if your reasons are different than mine, I would love to hear why.
So we're gonna make that like meme that was popular a couple of years ago of like I'm on Harry's side, change my mind
Yeah, the one where he's sitting at the like table.
at the table.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like what the one that I think, I don't know if this is the very first one ever, but the first one I ever saw was ravioli is a Pop-Tart, change my mind.
I love that.
That was the first one I ever saw, and I don't know if that was I wonder what the original image actually said. Now that I think about it,
It was a terrible thing. Like the original image was memed is like a conservative man, like saying something like terrible and it's like changed my mind.
ah, okay, all right. Well, ravioli is a Pop Tart probably wasn't the original one then.
Oh no, definitely not. Definitely not.
But if you think about it, ravioli is kind of like
I mean,
a meat Pop-Tart.
like a meat Pop-Tart?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, man. All right. Helene, when you are heating up meat Pop-Tarts, what media have you been consuming?
Ugh, gotta love my meat Pop-Tarts. A couple different things. The first, I mean, the Vow Part 2, which I'm sure you're also watching.
I have not watched it yet.
Okay.
Have you heard my baby is teething?
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. So yeah, what I'm sad is that they're doing this on a weekly basis, and usually when they do weekly releases, they at least release like anywhere between 2 to 3 episodes at the beginning and then do weekly after that. This one they did not have the courtesy of doing. They did not have the decency to do that. They are just doing one episode at a time, which makes me really sad. So there are only 2 episodes out right now. But it's really interesting this season of, because it's like season 2 of The Vow, but it's called The Vow Part 2. By the way, for those who forgot, The Vow is a docu-series on HBO Max about the Nixium cult with Keith Raniere and Nancy Salzman and like what's her name, Allison Mack. And it's, the first season was very, very interesting. This season so far, it's basically giving a platform to the people who are still very like active in the cult. Not active, but like it's giving a platform to the people who like still believe in Nixium's message. And it's interesting. I don't know. There are like, it definitely still highlights the bad parts, and it definitely still like shows that what they did was awful, but it kind of like intertwines with like people who are like, Nixium actually was amazing and it changed my life, and the bad rep it's getting is really unfortunate. I will say they got Nancy Salzman for this season though, who is the president of Nixium, and co-founder with Keith Raniere. And they have like almost all of episode 2 is with her, and it's very interesting. So I would highly recommend. And then Love is Blind season 3. I just watched the most recent episode right before we started recording. Amazing as always. Love it. Love is Blind is just a peak show if you haven't watched it on Netflix.
I still have not watched season 3, so I have some catching up to do, and when I do, I will text you as I'm watching.
Yeah, let me know what you think. I am still so undecided on some of these couples. Like, I feel like it goes back and forth between I love them and like, oh, they're awful together, and like, oh, I love them, and oh, this is not going to work out. This
is me and every couple in reality TV, if we're being honest.
I don't know. I feel like with Love is Blind, though, usually at the beginning, I'm like, I love this couple. I want them to work out. Like, and it usually stays the whole time. Or like, oh, these people are so not compatible. It's just not going to work. And like, usually that is pretty constant. This season, I'm like, I don't know. They're all kind of have their good and their bad. And like, I have no idea.
Well, maybe it's like more like gray because one, this is season 3, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So the people who are coming into this experiment already, like, it's out there. So they already know what they're getting into.
Yeah.
You know, so it's less, I don't know. I don't want to say, I mean, obviously I haven't seen the season, right? But like, it's less, it's like a season 3 of any reality TV show like The Bachelor, where it's like not as pure as it was in like season 1 when no one knew what they were getting into, right? Like,
they've had time to learn from the past, like the people in the past seasons.
So they're trying to also like brand themselves in a different way. So they're probably like, there's like layers there.
Yeah.
And also the casting decisions were probably different because the casting people learned from the past seasons, and the producers are more experienced. I know this is very like like, oh yeah, of course this is produced, right? So like the
Yeah.
producers are like knowing how to manipulate people in a better way.
And I feel like people, like, especially because, you know, most of these people probably are fans of the show and have seen the past seasons. They're probably like coming into it being like, I don't want to be the Shake or the Shayna of this season, right?
Oh, I don't want to be the Jessica of the
Yeah,
season.
or the Jessica, right? So like they're handling things different than maybe how they normally would have. So it's good. It's a good season. They got a lot of couples this season. I feel like because like past seasons, maybe like only 3 or so people might have like proposed or whatever. It
Uh-huh.
and so like they actually have a good amount of like a big pool to work with this season.
I wonder if that like also went into like the whole casting decision. I don't know. I
Yeah,
wonder about all these things, like the like nitty-gritty.
yeah,
I'm always like, trying to enjoy shows as they are, but then I always think about like all the labor behind the scenes, and I'm like,
yeah,
I wonder
yeah. The
like the
production, yeah.
producers did this.
Yeah, especially like as someone who works in the entertainment industry and like knows has learned a lot since starting my current job about like what goes into production and what goes into creating a show and all of that stuff like that it has always intrigued me, but it definitely has solidified that like at some point I would love to like be on a set and like see a production and like I don't know if that's what I want to do for my life, right? But like I would love to see like how a show is made. And I think about it very often.
All right, I could see it happening. I could see you doing that.
Yeah, it would be very interesting, I think. And then finally, I just have to say, and I know I've already said Handmaid's Tale probably at some point recently, but we're in season 5 right now, and honestly, I have to say this season has been fucking phenomenal. It's amazing. If you have yet to watch it, like it's probably the best season yet. You really need to watch
Okay,
it.
so these are 3 things that I have to get caught up on
Yes.
eventually and text you
Yes.
while it's happening.
Yes. Also, I didn't write this down, but season 3 of Unsolved Mysteries is also out at the moment. Well, they're doing weekly as well, but I think there are
Yeah,
like 4
I
episodes or
saw the
something.
first episode of that.
The first episode was crazy.
I know.
Yeah, it's insane. Thankfully they get the alien episode out of the way pretty early on. It's like episode 2. Hopefully they don't do another one because those are always kind of like not my favorite.
Oh, that's Seth's favorite.
Really, I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
always just like, yeah, aliens are probably out there. I don't know why we have a few cases of like mass like reportings of UFO sightings. I don't understand why that happens. There probably was an alien. Yeah, there probably were aliens.
Did I tell you the time my mom saw one? So
No.
my mom's not a believer, right, at
Mm.
all on you.
Mm-hmm.
Like up to this point, my mom's been like an UFO denier like her entire life, right?
Okay.
And this was like, do you remember when I went to Puerto Rico for to see the doctor because the doctors here wouldn't
Yeah.
give me my like
Yeah.
pressure pills?
Yeah. With your
Like
blood pressure. Yeah, I remember that.
this was last year.
Yeah.
So she comes home to her back to her house, and she's like, Adri, I just saw like this UFO, and I don't believe in aliens, but like this was insane. I was like, what the fuck are you talking
What did
about?
she
So she
see?
says that she was driving down Lajas, which is like 20 minutes away from her house, and it's a valley, right? So it's like open sky,
Mhm.
and this like thing like was like right in front of her, and she stares at it and she freezes, and then in a blink of an eye it disappears like a huge object in the sky. She's staring straight at it,
Yeah.
but she can't even like take it. She like has an entire like reaction in her body, kind of like shuts down, and she's not moving. She can't react.
Was she
And
driving
before
at the
she
time?
can, yes.
Wow.
And like so before she can like get a phone to like get a picture or
Mhm.
whatever, like her body just like wouldn't let her move
Wow.
basically to do that.
Wow.
And she's looking at it and straight up, and as she's looking at it disappears, and then she can react.
Okay, so I have to ask, are you a believer?
I am an agnostic of like, sure, it could be possible, and sure, there's other possible explanations for it. Like, I'm not like
Yeah.
denier nor believer. So like,
Yeah, I'm not
but
saying
it
that
just it was
I'm not saying every UFO sighting is definitely a UFO, but
correct.
I will say it is kind of ignorant, I guess, to
Hubris to assume that we're the only people
yeah, like
or the only
yeah,
species.
when you think about how completely vast the entire universe is. Like there has to be life somewhere. Like the thought that there isn't life anywhere else in the entire universe except for our one planet is absurd. There has to be life other places. And I
Yeah,
think
it's
it is
just
highly
sheer
possible.
hubris.
Yeah, I think it's highly possible that one of those millions of other galaxies, billions probably, I don't know how, there's lots of galaxies, billions of other galaxies in the universe that might have life. It is highly possible that one of those lives, one of those societies, whatever, has higher technical advances than us. That they've gotten those technical advances, or they have materials or like resources on their planets and their environments that make it easier to travel to our planets. Like, I would
Well,
not
you
be
know what?
surprised.
But you know what also is hubris? The idea that like there like of all those, let's say there's like other species like out there, like that they would be like so entranced by our hot mess of a planet that they're like,
Well,
you know what I want to do? I want to visit.
if they're like also on the search for any other life in the universe, and we're the first that they happen to come across, sure. I mean, they're probably just as curious about other life in the universe as we are, right?
Yeah, probably they haven't made contact because they're a hot mess. Like, we're just gonna leave them
It's
like
very
destroy
possible.
themselves.
Yeah, yeah. I just think that like, yeah, it's 100% possible that there are aliens and that they might have come here. But I don't think that every single person who said they've seen an alien is actually an alien.
Oh yeah, no. So I just think it's kind of funny because my mom was like a staunch denier and like
Yeah,
aliens, and then
that's
she was like shook. She was like, "Oh my god, they're real."
that's amazing. So she's converted now to a believer.
Not to the point of like she's obsessed with it, obviously, but no, she's just more like can't deny that there might be something out there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if it's weird and unexplainable to her, then yeah, definitely. I tend to like the true
So
crime episodes of Unsolved Mysteries more than the alien ones, personally.
I mean, that first episode of this new season was fucking insane.
That was the train one, right? The girl who got
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
I 100% believe she was murdered.
the third episode, it's it's not an alien one. It's another person. It's another murder, but like with that one, it's weird because I'm pretty sure after watching it, like we know what happened. It's just like, or at least I can infer what happened, but it's still fucking crazy to think about. So
Another thing I have to catch up on.
mhm.
The only thing I've been consuming since last week
Oh
is
yes.
what millions, if not billions, of people are consuming, which is
Ah!
Taylor Swift's Midnight.
What's your favorite song? What's your favorite song?
Okay, I have so many favorites, but like, maybe it's because, God, it's so catchy. Anti-hero, like,
Yeah, that was my like the first time I heard it, I was like, "Yep, I love this song." I will say the whole thing with the music video kind of soured it a little bit for me, but
same.
I did see that she actually edited her music video to remove that part on Apple
Oh,
Music. On Apple Music,
okay,
it no longer shows her looking at the scale. Like it shows her standing on the scale
yeah,
and like, but it doesn't show the scale, which is nice.
okay.
So like that's like being called out for your actions and taking responsibility and making a change. Like that's responsible. I like that. Of course, it hasn't been updated on YouTube because like when you YouTube, it's like kind of like a Twitter situation where when you post it, Like, if you delete
It's
that,
forever.
yeah, if you can't edit the video once you've posted it. So the only way for
You have
her
to
to,
post it again.
yeah, she'd have to delete it and repost it, and that would, coming from a social media manager, that would like negate the millions of views that she already
Views, yeah.
has, and therefore would just tank her engagement, and like her, like it would make it look like it wasn't as successful as it was,
Yeah.
which would suck. Like,
Completely understand.
so like from just because I'm a social media manager, that's the only reason where I'm like, I can understand why she wouldn't do it on YouTube. But I mean, I wish she would, for moral reasons, but I can understand why she wouldn't. But yes,
Yeah,
I
like,
also love anti-hero.
just, hi, it's me. I'm the problem. It's me. I'm like, yes.
So relatable.
I too am the problem.
And also, it's weird, but I didn't like the music video, but I really do like Bejeweled as a song. I really do like that song.
Yeah, I also liked the Karma was pretty okay for me.
Yeah, that one's okay. That one's okay.
I really like this concept album, I have to say.
And Snow at the Beach. I liked Snow at the Beach.
Oh, that was pretty good. I feel like, I mean, I've listened to it a couple times over already. It's just a vibe, like,
yes.
Sad Taylor is one of my favorite Taylors.
I have to say, okay, so Meghan Trainor came out with her album on the same day that Taylor Swift came out with her album.
Oh, and so did Carly Rae Jepsen.
Oh, Carly Rae Jepsen. I didn't know that. I haven't listened to Carly Rae Jepsen's earlier albums, but I've heard great things about her.
She's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm a huge Meghan Trainor fan, which I know like back in the day might have been like kind of controversial, because like I know that like people didn't like the like message of All About That Bass or whatever. But she's actually like, she's a very good artist, and a lot of her songs are really like female empowerment and very catchy and very just like, they just like put you in a good mood, and they're like boppy. But her album that came out on the same day as Taylor Swift's album, which I think, what's it called? It's called Taking It Back. That is a great album. I'm so sad that it got overshadowed by Taylor. I love Taylor. I love Taylor very much, but I wish that Meghan Trainor got her due as well. That's all I'll say. Go listen to Taking It Back by Meghan Trainor.
Yeah, it's just unfair. Like, it's just unfair whenever Beyonce or Taylor drop an album,
or Rihanna or whoever
drops an album on the same day, because
it was just,
they're going to get overshadowed.
It's a poor business decision on their part. Like, if you know that Taylor Swift is going to drop an album, move your album drop.
Just, move it. Like, don't try to compete. Like, there's no competition at this point.
You're not going to be able to compete, unfortunately. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, no, I, again, really love this concept album. Like, the idea of, like, these are not to be taken literally. Like, I like this idea, like, this newer idea of, like, these are just, like, stories. This is not literally about my life. Maybe I thought about them. Maybe I did them. Let's not think that I actually did these things. It's my diary, but not literally my diary. I like this much better than, like, it's a blind item.
Yeah, I mean, the majority of her past albums have been musical moments that describe her life.
Yes.
So it's a nice change.
Folklore and Evermore were like a really good departure from that. And I feel like with Midnights, she's getting to like a happy medium to where it's a storytelling album that has elements of her real life, but with enough like nuance in there to say like it is not literal.
Yeah, and I think like the styles that you hear in it are very reminiscent of a lot of her. Like it's a good mixture, right? Because I hear like in vigilante shit, I hear a lot of the Reputation era.
I'm sorry, vigilante shit is like my number 2.
Yeah, that's a good one. You hear Reputation era like Taylor and that.
Which, like, I know this is a controversial thing to say, but I really like Reputation era Taylor as an Enneagram 8.
Yeah, I love Reputation as well. It's not my favorite Taylor. Lover, I think, is my favorite Taylor album right now.
Okay,
but I don't hate Reputation.
Okay, so other than like Midnights, 1989 and Folklore are one of my favorite Taylor albums. Reputation is also up there, but it's just that as an Enneagram 8, there's something about going scorched earth
Yeah.
that really appeals to me. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I get it. Yeah, I get it. I would say my favorite Taylor albums are Lover and probably Speak Now.
That is such an Enneagram 2 thing to say, I have to say.
I love Speak Now. I don't know. I also love Fearless.
I again, love Taylor. Love all the Taylors that have come before her. But like, you chose like the most like lovey, touchy, feely albums, and here I am like, I like the sassy albums.
Yeah, 1989 is like Take No Shit Taylor, right? Because she has like Shake It Off and like Blank Space.
Yeah, and then like Reputation is Scorched Earth,
yeah,
you know?
And then Reputation is like Fuck Everyone Taylor. Lover is like, I found love again and like I'm happy. Like
it's like Love Bubble Taylor.
Yes, and Speak Now is I don't know. I just have so many good memories of that album. It's such a I think that's going to be the next
Speak Now is optimistic Taylor, you know?
Yeah. I think it's going to be the next Taylor's version release too, which I'm really excited about. I've been waiting for.
I'm so excited about the re-releases. Yes. Hell yes.
I'm very excited about it.
I refuse to stream any of her old albums until she re-releases.
Well, that's hard because I really want to listen to Speak Now, but I can't listen to like Taylor's version until she releases it. So I have to. I mean, yeah, it's gonna. Yeah, I'm very excited for that. Quite a bit.
But until she does that, we have Midnights.
Yes. Midnights is great. I loved it.
Well, I think that's a great place and time to end this show on today. So that's it for today's episode. Please join us next time as we talk about Chapter 16 of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. And this one is titled Godric's Hollow.
If you've enjoyed today's conversation about Chapter 15 of Deathly Hallows, please take a second to give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or I don't know, where do other people listen? Is Podbean still a thing? I don't know.
Amazon Music, Spotify, wherever you can get podcasts.
Google Play, possibly. I don't know. Wherever you...
Also, Archaeopolitics.com, by the way.
Yes, if you want to listen to us straight from the source, you can go listen to us on our website. Patreon, if you happen to be listening from Patreon, you're getting ad-free content, so good for you. Anyway.
And if you're not listening to us on our Patreon feed, but you want ad-free content, you can go to patreon.com/Archaeopolitics, and for $1 a month, you can have ad-free content.
Hell yes. Unfortunately, you can't give us a 5-star rating on Patreon, I don't think, but you can give us a 5-star rating on all the other places that we mentioned, I'm sure. And if you do so, that would be very helpful because it helps other people find the podcast and discover us and tell their friends about it and gets us, more listeners. And the more people that listen to us, the more people will get to hear our favorite songs off Midnights, which is a very important thing that needs to be learned by everyone on the planet.
And also get to hear as to why Helene hates Ron.
Yeah, I mean, I need to indoctrinate more Ron haters every day. I have to hit a quota. So help me hit my quota. I get a free pink car if I convert 20 Ron haters a month. So
you're talking about a Mary Kate Cadillac.
Yeah. Help me get my car.
Well, and until that happens, and Helene gets her pink Cadillac, politics managed. Support this show by going to patreon.com/Archaeopolitics. Our patrons keep this show going. You can find us online at archaeopolitics.com, and we are at Archaeopolitics on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can email us your thoughts at info@archaeopolitics.com. Leave us a voicemail at 915-996-1699, and you might just hear yourself on the podcast. Adriana Wilson is the founder and creative director of the podcast. Helene Karp is the producer and social media manager. Allison Pullman is the audio wizard and editor who makes us sound so good. Cover art and physical rewards are designed by Adriana Wilson. The views expressed by the hosts and guests are expressly their own and not representative of their employers or associates. Occiopolitics is part of the MuggleNet family of podcasts.